The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched for 3 kilometers in every direction. Crystal pillars held up a ceiling that showed the stars themselves, and floating platforms carried delegates from 12 different species to their assigned places. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the fate of 1,000 worlds was decided every single day, at the smallest platform. Near the back of the hall, where the light was dim and the sound systems barely worked, sat the human delegation. Ambassador Park Yuna adjusted her formal jacket and checked her notes for the 100th time. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and calm eyes that had seen too much. Beside her sat Commander Lee Taiho, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that showed no emotion. On her other side was Dr. Kong Minji, the youngest of the 3, whose fingers moved constantly over her datapad as she recorded everything that happened in the chamber. "The Velith speaker is about to announce the new trade routes," Minji whispered. Yuna nodded. She already knew what would happen. It had happened before, many times. The Velith were tall beings with silver skin and 4 arms. They had ruled the Galactic Council for 3,000 years, and they made sure everyone remembered this fact. Their speaker, a creature named High Voice Telmac, rose on his platform until he towered above everyone else in the chamber. "The Council has reviewed the trade route allocations," Telmac announced. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "After careful consideration, we have decided to reduce human shipping lanes by 60%. Their routes will be given to more established species." Yuna pressed a button on her console. The human delegation votes against this measure. Laughter rippled through the chamber. It came from every direction, from every species. The Marathi beings of living shadow made a sound like breaking glass. The Cathari creatures with too many eyes and not enough mercy clicked their mandibles in amusement. "Your vote is noted," Telmac said with obvious boredom. "The measure passes. 11-1. Yuna simply nodded and returned to her notes. This was how it had been for 40 years. Humanity had joined the Council with hope and optimism. They had believed that being part of galactic civilization meant friendship, cooperation, and mutual respect. They had been wrong. The older species saw humans as children. Worse than children. They saw them as insects that had somehow learned to build starships. Humanity's entire history, all 10,000 years of civilization, was nothing to beings who remembered the birth of stars. "Look at them," a Marathi delegate said loudly, making sure the humans could hear. "They breed like vermin and die like mayflies. Why do we even allow them here?" Commander Taiho's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Dr. Minji's fingers paused over her datapad for just a moment, then continued their work. Ambassador Yuna smiled politely and made a note. After the session ended, the 3 humans walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime toward their quarters. Other species moved out of their way, not out of respect, but because they did not want to touch them. Some made gestures of disgust. Others simply pretended the humans did not exist. "How much longer?" Taiho asked quietly. 3 months, Yuna replied. "The last ship leaves Earth's orbit in 3 months. They entered their quarters. The rooms were small and poorly maintained. The Council provided luxury accommodations for every other species, but humans received converted storage spaces. Yuna did not complain. She never complained. She walked to a window and looked out at the stars. "They have no idea," Minji said softly. "They really have no idea what we do for them." "No," Yuna agreed. "And they never bothered to ask." Somewhere beyond the light of civilized space, in the cold dark between galaxies, human warships patrolled borders that no other species even knew existed. They fought things that the Council believed were myths. They died in battles that would never be recorded in any history. Admiral Cho Minho commanded this fleet. They called it the Silent Watch. 4,000 warships, crewed by men and women who had volunteered to spend their lives in the darkness. They received no medals. Their families were told they had died in training accidents. Their sacrifices bought peace for a galaxy that did not know they existed. But now, slowly and quietly, those ships were coming home. Yuna opened a communication channel. The face of Admiral Cho appeared on her screen. He was an old man now, with scars on his face and weariness in his eyes. "Ambassador," he said, "the withdrawal is proceeding on schedule. All deep space stations have been abandoned. All observation posts have been destroyed. We left nothing behind, and the barriers. Gone. We took them down ourselves. The things on the other side. They know the barriers are gone. They're already moving." Una closed her eyes for a moment. How long? 800 days. Maybe less. It depends on how fast they are. Some of them are very fast. Thank you, Admiral. Come home, all of you. Come home and rest. Screen went dark. Tejo stood by the door, his arms crossed. When we leave, they'll celebrate. They'll divide our territory. They'll congratulate themselves on finally getting rid of us, as Una said. They will, and then they'll learn. Minji looked up from her datapad. "I've finished the final report. 40 years of service to the Council. Every insult we received. Every vote that went against us. Every time they laughed at our dead. It's all documented." "Good." Una picked up a small bag and began packing her personal items. They'll want to read it someday. When they finally understand. In the Great Hall of Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council continued its business. They argued about mining rights. They debated territorial boundaries. They made jokes about the Quiet. Humans who sat in the back and never fought for anything. They did not notice that the human delegation had been packing for 3 months. They did not notice that human ships throughout the galaxy were quietly returning to Earth. They did not notice the reports from the Outer Rim, where strange signals were beginning to appear. Signals that had not been heard in 800 years. In her small quarters, Ambassador Park Una looked at a photograph of Earth. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds, home. "We tried," she said to no one. "We really tried. For 40 years, we tried to be good allies, good partners, good members of this council." She put the photograph in her bag. But some lessons cannot be taught. They can only be learned. In the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, something ancient stirred. It had been held back for so long. It had been fought by strange small creatures in metal ships. But those creatures were leaving now. The barriers were gone. The Watchers had departed, and it was hungry. So very, very hungry. The 4,892nd Grand Session of the Galactic Council began like every other session before it. Delegates floated on their platforms. Speakers droned about trade agreements. The Valeth high-voiced Telmac sat on his raised throne and looked down at everyone with cold satisfaction. Ambassador. "Ah!" Park Una sat at the human platform for the last time. She wore her formal jacket pressed and clean. Her gray-streaked hair was tied back neatly. Her hands rested on the console in front of her. It's perfectly still. Commander Lee Taiho stood behind her in his military uniform. Every medal he had ever earned was pinned to his chest. There were not many. Humanity did not give medals for secret wars that no one could know about. Dr. Kong Minji held a small data crystal in her hand. It contained 40 years of records. 40 years of pain. 40 years of silent service and loud mockery. "The next matter," Telmac announced, "concerns mineral rights in the outer spiral. The Kethari delegation has filed a complaint against High Voice." The word cut through the chamber like a blade. Every delegate turned to look at the source of the interruption. Ambassador Una had spoken. In 40 years, the human delegation had never interrupted a session. They had barely spoken at all. The shock in the chamber was complete. Telmac's forearms twitched with annoyance. The human delegate will wait her turn. No. Una stood up. Her voice was calm and clear. "I will not wait. I have waited for 40 years. I will not wait one moment longer." The chamber fell silent. This was new. This was strange. Some delegates leaned forward with curiosity. Others exchanged confused glances. "The United Earth Confederation," Una said, "formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately." For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. No one spoke. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then the laughter began. It started with the Moradi. their shadow forms shaking with amusement. The Cathari joined in, their mandibles clicking in a horrible rhythm. Soon, the entire chamber was filled with the sound. Every species, every delegate, every aide and servant, they all laughed at the tiny humans who thought they could survive alone. Telmac raised one of his 4 hands. The laughter slowly died. "Ambassador Yuna," he said, his voice dripping with false concern, "surely you understand what you are saying. Your species cannot survive without council trade routes. Your worlds will starve. Your people will die. Is this what you want?" "What I want," Yuna replied, "has never mattered to this council." She gestured to Commander Taiho. He stepped forward and placed the data crystal on the main console. It began uploading automatically to every delegate's system. "This contains our formal resignation," Yuna explained. "All treaties are void. All agreements are cancelled. All obligations are ended. You will find everything in order. We have always been very careful with our paperwork." Cathari delegate, a creature with 12 eyes that never blinked, made a sound of contempt. "And where will you go, little ones? Back to your single small planet? You have nothing. You are nothing. You will come crawling back to us within 1 cycle, begging for scraps?" Yuna looked at the creature for a long moment. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "perhaps we will." She turned and began walking toward the exit. Taiho and Minji followed her in perfect step. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. "Wait," Telmac called out. There was something in his voice now. Not concern exactly, not fear, but something close to curiosity. "Why now? After 40 years of accepting our decisions, why do you leave now?" Yuna stopped at the doorway. She did not turn around. "Because now our work is done." "What work?" "You have done nothing. You have contributed nothing. You simply sat in the back and watched." "Yes." Finally Yuna turned. Her eyes moved across the chamber, looking at each species in turn. The mighty Valeth, the terrifying Cathari, the ancient Marathi, beings who had lived for millennia, beings who commanded fleets of thousands, beings who believed themselves the masters of all creation. "We watched," she said. "We learned. And we remembered." Dr. Minji stepped forward. She was young, but her eyes were old. She had spent 10 years in the Silent Watch before joining the diplomatic corps. She had seen things that would drive most beings mad. "In exactly 847 standard days," Mingi said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you will understand why we never argued, why we never fought back, why we simply watched. Is that a threat?" The Marathi delegate's shadow form grew larger, darker. "You dare to threaten the council?" "No." Minji shook her head slowly. "A threat implies that we will do something to you. We will do nothing. We will simply stop doing what we have always done." "And what is that?" Minji smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "You never asked? In 40 years, you never once asked what humanity contributed to this galaxy. You never wondered why the Outer Rim stayed quiet. You never questioned why the ancient horrors in the deep dark never reached your precious civilized worlds. Perhaps you should have asked." The doors of the chamber began to open. Through them, the delegates could see a corridor filled with human staff. Aides, guards, technicians, translators. Every human on Nexus Prime was waiting. They carried no bags. They wore no expressions. "Where are they all going?" someone asked. Home Commander Taiho said. It was the first word he had spoken in the session. His voice was deep and rough, the voice of a man who had spent too many years giving orders in the dark. "We are all going home." He looked at the Valeth high voice, meeting those cold silver eyes without fear. "For 40 years we protected you. We asked for nothing in return. We accepted your insults. We tolerated your mockery. We even laughed at your jokes about our short lives and our weak bodies." His hand reached down and touched the medals on his chest. "These medals represent soldiers who died fighting enemies you do not believe exist. Ships that were destroyed holding lines you do not know about. Men and women who gave everything so that you could sit in this beautiful hall and feel safe." He dropped his hand. "We do not hate you for your cruelty. We do not even hate you for your ignorance. But we have decided, together as a species, that we no longer wish to die for people who laugh at our funerals." The doors closed behind them. The chamber remained silent for a very long time. Then, slowly, the laughter returned. It was uncertain at first, almost forced. But it grew louder as the delegates convinced themselves that nothing had really changed. "Good riddance," Telmac declared. "Let the vermin run back to their planet. We will divide their territory tomorrow." The Council passed 12 resolutions that day. They celebrated humanity's departure. They congratulated themselves on finally removing the embarrassment from their midst. They opened bottles of ancient wine and toasted to a brighter future in the corridor outside. A small cleaning bot found something on the floor. It was a human data chip, dropped perhaps by accident. The bot picked it up and examined it with simple sensors. The chip contained a single message, recorded by Ambassador Park Yuna. "To whoever finds this, I am sorry. We tried to warn you in every way we could, but you would not listen. You never listened. Perhaps, when the darkness comes, you will finally hear. But by then, I fear it will be too late. Goodbye, and may whatever gods you worship have mercy on you, because what is coming will not." The cleaning bot stored the chip in its memory banks. It would not be found for 846 days. By then, half the galaxy would already be burning. The first 100 days after humanity's departure were the happiest the Galactic Council had ever known. Trade routes expanded. Mining operations increased by 40%. The Velith claimed the human shipping lanes and grew richer than ever before. The Cathari took the human observation posts in the Outer Rim and turned them into military bases. The Marathi absorbed the human research stations and celebrated their new territory with dark rituals. On Nexus Prime, high-voiced Telmac gave a speech about the dawn of a new golden age. He spoke of how the galaxy was finally free of the human embarrassment. He spoke of how the elder species would now reach their full potential. He spoke for 6 hours, and every word was broadcast to 1,000 worlds. No one noticed the first disappearance. It was a small mining colony on the edge of Cathari space. 3,000 workers simply stopped sending reports. The Cathari sent a ship to investigate. The ship never returned. They sent a fleet. The fleet found nothing. The colony was gone. Not destroyed. Not evacuated. Just gone. As if it had never existed. The Cathari blamed pirates. They increased patrols. They moved on. 100 days became 200. 300 the disappearances continued. A research station here. A supply depot there. Always on the outer edges. Always in places that no one important cared about. The Council received reports, filed them away, forgot about them. On day 312, the Void Lurkers returned. No one alive had seen a Void Lurker. They were creatures of legend, of nightmare, of ancient stories told to frighten children. They lived in the dark spaces between stars, in the cold emptiness where light never reached. They had not been seen in civilized space for 800 years. But now they came. The first attack hit a Marathi colony world. The shadows that made up Marathi bodies were strong, ancient, powerful. They had conquered 100 species. They feared nothing. The Void Lurker killed them all in 6 hours. It was not a battle. It was a feeding. When the rescue fleet arrived, they found a dead world. No bodies, no wreckage, no signs of resistance. Just empty buildings and silent streets, and a darkness that seemed to move when you were not looking at it. The Marathi High Council demanded answers. They searched their ancient records. They found references to the Void Lurkers, brief mentions of a threat from the deep dark, but the records were incomplete. Large sections had been removed or destroyed. Who fought them before? The Marathi leader demanded. Who drove them back? No one knew. The attacks increased. Day after day, world after world. The Void Lurkers were not the only threat. There were others. Things with too many teeth. Things that existed in dimensions that hurt to look at. Things that ate starships and sang songs of madness. The Council held emergency sessions. They debated. They argued. They blamed each other. They deployed their fleets and watched them die. On day 450, a Velith general named Koro finally asked the question that no one wanted to ask. Where did these things come from? The answer came from an old Kethari scientist, a creature who had lived for 2,000 years and seen many strange things. They were always there, the scientist said. In the outer darkness, beyond the rim. They've always been there, waiting and hungry. Then why did they not attack before? The scientist was quiet for a long moment. Something was holding them back. Something was keeping them at bay. For centuries, something has been fighting them, dying against them, bleeding to keep them away from us. What? What was fighting them? The scientist pulled up a star map. It showed the galaxy beautiful and vast. It showed the territories of the council species. And it showed something else. A thin red line running along the outer edge of everything. A line of old patrol routes and abandoned observation posts and destroyed military stations. The humans, the scientist said. The humans were fighting them. Chamber erupted in anger and denial. Humans could not fight such creatures. Humans were weak. Humans were vermin. Humans had contributed nothing, but the evidence was there. In the old reports that no one had read, in the patrol schedules that no one had noticed, in the constant presence of human ships in the deep dark places where no other species dared to go, for 40 years, humanity had maintained a secret fleet. 4,000 warships, crewed by volunteers who knew they would never come home. They had called it the Silent Watch, and it had stood between civilization and Nightmare 4 for decades. Now the Silent Watch was gone. The ships orbited Earth, silent and still. The barriers they had built were destroyed. The patrols they had run were abandoned, and the things in the darkness had noticed. On day 500, the Council sent its first diplomatic mission to Earth. A Velith ambassador named Saleth. Chosen for his skill with words and his famous charm, he arrived at Earth expecting a broken world. A species begging for help. He found a fortress. The planet was surrounded by 800 warships. Not the small patrol vessels that the Council had seen before, but massive battle cruisers armed with weapons that Saleth did not recognize. Human space stations dotted the system, each one a city of metal and fire. Secretary Han Jisoo met him at the main station. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "We received your request for a meeting," she said. "We are happy to receive you." Saleth demanded to see their leaders. He demanded that they return to the Council. He demanded that they resume their patrols. Jisoo listened to everything he said. She nodded politely. She offered him tea. "We understand your concerns," she said when he finished. "The Council is facing difficult times. We are truly sorry for your losses. Then help us. Send your ships. Fight these monsters." Jisoo set down her teacup. No. You would let the galaxy burn? The galaxy made its choice. Her voice remained gentle, but there was something beneath it now. Something cold. For 40 years we asked for nothing but respect. We received mockery. For 40 years we gave everything. We received contempt. For 40 years we died in the darkness so that your children could sleep safely. And you laughed at our funerals. She stood up and walked to a window. Earth hung below them, blue and green and beautiful. "We are not angry, Ambassador. Anger would require us to have expected better. We never did. We always knew what you thought of us. We simply hoped that service and sacrifice might change your minds." "It was not personal," Saleth said desperately. "It was politics. It was tradition. We did not mean you meant every word." Jisoo did not turn around. "Every insult, every joke, every vote against us. You meant all of it. And that is fine. That is your right. But it is also our right to choose who we die for." She finally turned to face him. "We choose to die for ourselves now. For our own children, for our own future, not for species who consider us vermin." Saleth left Earth 3 days later. His report to the Council was classified at the highest level, but whispers spread anyway. Whispers about human weapons that could crack planets, about human soldiers who had fought nightmares and won, about a small species that had been preparing for a very long time. On day 700, the Marathi homeworld fell. The ancient darkness consumed it in a single night. The council screamed for help. They sent message after message to Earth. Apologies, bribes, threats. Earth responded to each one with the same message, delivered in the same calm voice. We wish you well. We bear no grudge. We will not interfere. The darkness continued to grow. Day 847 arrived like any other day. The suns rose on 1,000 worlds. Ships traveled through space. People went about their lives, trying not to think about the darkness that grew closer every day. And then the message arrived. It came simultaneously to every council species capital world, every government building, every military command center, every news station, every personal communication device. There was no sender address. There was no way to trace it. It simply appeared as if it had always been there, waiting for the right moment. The message contained files. Thousands of files. 40 years of records that humanity had kept in perfect detail. Fleet Admiral Oyunji appeared on every screen in the galaxy. She was an old woman now, with white hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much death. She wore a simple uniform with no medals, no decorations. Behind her, through a window, the stars of human space glowed quietly. "My name is Oyunji," she said. "I am the commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. For the past 40 years, I commanded what we called the Silent Watch. I am recording this message because you deserve to know the truth. All of it." The files began to play. The first video showed a battle. Human ships, small and outnumbered, fighting something that looked like a tier in reality itself. The thing had no shape, no form. It was simply wrong in a way that hurt to look at. The human ships fired weapons that blazed like small suns. The thing screamed in frequencies that shattered sensors and drove crew members mad. "This was our first contact with what we call a rift entity," Yunji explained. "The year was 2347, 6 years after we joined the council. We lost 40 ships and 3,000 crew members. The council never knew. We never told them."
How?
More videos. More battles. More death. A swarm of creatures that ate metal and bone. Human soldiers in armored suits, fighting hand-to-hand in the corridors of a dying station. A young commander named Shin Do-yun ordering his crew to ram their damaged ship into the swarm's heart, saving a colony of 2 million people who never knew they were in danger. Shin Do-yun was 29 years old, Yanji said. He had a wife and a daughter waiting for him on Earth. He received no medal. His name appears on no memorial. His family was told he died in a training accident. The files continued. A planet covered in something that looked like living shadow. Human ships in orbit, dropping weapons that burned like stars. The planet cracking, breaking apart, dying, and with it, the shadow creature that had been using it as a nest. "We sacrificed 17 planets over 40 years, Yangji said. Planets that could have been homes, that could have been colonies. We destroyed them ourselves to contain threats that the council refused to believe existed." Medical records appeared on screens. Lists of names, thousands and thousands of names. Men and women who had served in the Silent Watch, their ages, their ranks, their causes of death. 2,300,000 soldiers died under my command, Yanji said. Her voice did not shake, but something in her eyes grew darker. Some died quickly in battle. Some died slowly from wounds that our medicine could not heal. Some died in their sleep years later from the things they had seen. A pause. Yanji looked directly into the camera. And when they died, the council laughed at them, called them vermin, said they bred too fast and died too easily, made jokes about human lives being cheap. The videos changed. Council sessions appeared now. The Velith High voiced Telmac, making his speech about reducing human trade routes. The Marathi delegate calling humans vermin. The Cathari refusing to acknowledge human votes. Year after year after year of insults and mockery and contempt. "We recorded everything," Yunji said. "Every word. Every gesture. Every laugh. We recorded it because we wanted to understand. We wanted to believe that if we just served longer, sacrificed more, proved ourselves worthy, you might finally accept us. We were wrong. We understand that now. Some species cannot be taught. They can only be shown. The final file began to play. It was dated 3 days before humanity's withdrawal from the Council. Admiral Yunji stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Eternal Dawn. Around her, officers worked at their stations. Through the view screen, the darkness of deep space stretched forever. "This is Fleet Admiral O. Yunji recording final orders for the Silent Watch," the younger version of her said. "Effective immediately, all ships will begin withdrawal procedures. Observation Post 7 will be abandoned first, followed by stations along the outer rim. Barrier generators are to be destroyed in place. Leave nothing behind." She paused, looking at something off camera. "I know this is hard. I know that what we are doing will cause suffering. Millions will die, perhaps billions. Species that have existed for millennia will fall. Civilizations will end." Her jaw tightened. "But we have given them 40 years of our lives, 40 years of our blood, 40 years of our children's futures, and they have given us nothing but hatred in return." She turned back to the camera. "We do not do this for revenge. Revenge is wasteful. We do this because it is the only way they will ever learn. Some lessons cannot be taught. They can only be experienced." The recording ended. Admiral Yunji reappeared on screens, older now, tired now. "That was 3 years ago," she said. "In those 3 years, we have watched from a distance. We have seen the void lurkers consume your colonies. We have seen the rift entities tear through your fleets. We have seen the things we fought in secret become the nightmares that haunt your days." She leaned forward. "We do not enjoy your suffering. We take no pleasure in your pain. We simply wanted you to understand what we did for you, what we sacrificed, what we gave." The screens showed statistics now. Council fleet losses, world counts, population numbers, all of them falling, falling, falling. "You have lost more in 3 years than we lost in 40, Yanji said. "And this is only the beginning. The things in the darkness are patient. They will take their time. They will savor every moment." Her voice softened. "We will not help you. We cannot help you. To do so would be to waste the lesson. But we will remember you. When the last of your species is gone, when your worlds are silent, we will tell stories about you. We will remember the mighty Velith, the ancient Marathi, the terrible Cathari. We will remember all of you." She stood up. "And we will make sure that every young human knows the truth, that once, long ago, there were beings who thought themselves gods, who laughed at the small and the weak and the young, who believed that cruelty was strength and contempt was wisdom." Her final words echoed across 1,000 worlds. "We will teach them what happened to those beings, so that humanity never forgets what we are capable of. Not our cruelty, not our weapons, not our ships." It was the saddest smile the galaxy had ever seen. Our patience. That is what makes us dangerous. We can wait. We can endure. We can watch you destroy yourselves, and we will not blink. We will not flinch. We will simply wait until the lesson is learned. The screens went dark, in council chambers, in government halls, and military headquarters across the galaxy. Beings who had lived for millennia sat in silence. They looked at each other with new eyes. They looked at the stars with new fear, and for the first time in 8,000 years, they felt small. The Velith homeworld burned for 6 days. It was a beautiful world once. Silver cities reaching toward lavender skies. Crystal towers that sang when the wind blew through them. Gardens that had grown for 10,000 years, tended by generations of devoted caretakers. Now it was ash and screaming and darkness, the void. Lurkers came from everywhere at once. They rose from the planet's shadow. They fell from the space between stars. They emerged from the nightmares of sleeping children and the fears of dying soldiers. There was no fighting them. There was only running. And the running never lasted long. High-voiced Telmac died on the steps of the Grand Temple, still giving orders to soldiers who had already been consumed. His final words were a demand for human assistance. His final sight was the darkness swallowing his children, the Velith fleet. Pride of 8,000 years of civilization gathered above their dying world. 3,000 warships, the greatest military force in galactic history. They had conquered 100 species. They had ruled the stars for longer than humanity had existed. The Hive brood destroyed them in 4 hours. The Hive was not like the Void Lurkers. The Hive was physical, real, something you could touch and shoot and kill. But there were so many of them. Billions of creatures moving as one mind, each one a weapon, each one hungry. Human patrol ships had destroyed Hive scouts routinely for 40 years. The Velith fleet had never seen one before. They learned quickly. They died quickly. There was no difference. On the bridge of the UES Eternal Watch, Commander Lee Tai-ho stood beside Admiral Oh Yoonji. The main screen showed the Velith homeworld, now just a dark spot against the stars. Emergency communications filled the air with voices crying for help. The Maradi are requesting asylum, reported Lieutenant Beeknari from her station. Their entire species. They're offering everything they have. Admiral Yoonji did not look up from her console. Send the standard response. Admiral, ... Tai-ho's voice was quiet. He had been a soldier all his life. He had killed enemies and watched friends die. But this was different. This was watching civilizations end. They'll die. All of them. Every single one. Yes. Yoonji finally raised her eyes. They were tired. So tired. They will learn or they will die. That is the way of the universe. It was our way once. Before we grew strong in the darkness. She turned back to the screen. Do you remember what it was like, Tai-ho? Before we joined the council? Before we knew there were other species in the stars? He nodded slowly. We were afraid. Afraid of the unknown. Afraid of what might be out there. And what did we do with that fear? We prepared. We built ships. We trained soldiers. We made ourselves ready for whatever we might find. Yes. Yoonji smiled faintly. That is what humans do. We see darkness, and we prepare for it. We see danger, and we face it. We see threats, and we fight them. Not because we are brave, not because we are strong, but because we understand that the universe does not care about us. It will not protect us. It will not save us. We must save ourselves. She gestured at the dying galaxy on the screen. They never understood that. They had their great fleets and their ancient civilizations and their beautiful worlds, and they believed they were safe. They believed the universe loved them. They believed that nothing could ever hurt them because nothing ever had. Her voice hardened. We showed them the truth. We held back the darkness for 40 years so they could keep believing their lie. And when we stopped, the truth came rushing in. A new transmission appeared on the screen. It was from Nexus Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council. The Great Hall, where humanity had been mocked for 4 decades, was now a shelter for the last survivors of a dozen species. The Kethari delegate appeared on screen. Half of its 12 eyes were dark, damaged. Its voice was barely a whisper. Humans, we know you are watching. We know you can hear us. Tai-ho stepped forward, but Yoonji raised a hand to stop him. We were wrong, the Kethari continued. We were so wrong about everything. You are not vermin. You were not insects. You were the only ones who understood. The only ones who saw what was really out there. It paused, struggling to breathe. We treated you with cruelty. We laughed at your dead. We stole your trade routes and mocked your pain. There is no excuse. There is no justification. We were arrogant fools, and we deserve everything that has happened to us. Behind the Kethari, other beings gathered. Velith survivors, Maradi shadows, representatives of species that had once ruled the stars and now huddled in a dying station. But we are asking anyway, begging, pleading. If there is any mercy in you, any compassion, please help us. Not for ourselves, We know we deserve to die. But for our children, for the young ones who never had a chance to insult you, for the ones who are too small to understand why the darkness is coming, the Cathari lowered its head. Please. The bridge of the Eternal Watch was silent. Every officer watched the screen. Every heart waited for the Admiral's response. Yonji closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were wet. Send the response, she said softly. Nari's fingers trembled over her console. The standard one. No. Yonji stood up and walked to the main screen. She looked at the Cathari delegate, at the desperate faces behind it, at the dying hope in 12 damaged eyes. Tell them this. We wish you well. We bear no grudge. We will not interfere, but we will remember. We will remember that in your final moments, you found the words you could not find for 40 years. And perhaps, when we tell the story of your species to our children, we will tell them that the Cathari died with dignity. She paused. Tell them we are sorry. Not for what we did, but for what you forced us to become. The transmission ended. Tejo stood beside her as the screen went dark. Will any of them survive? Some perhaps, the ones who run fast enough. The ones who hide deep enough. In 1,000 years there might be remnants, fragments, memories of species that once ruled the stars. She turned to face the bridge crew. Young men and women who had never known the mockery of the Council, who had grown up in a humanity that was strong and proud and unafraid. Set course for home, she ordered. We have our own people to protect, our own future to build. The galaxy will sort itself out, one way or another. The ship turned away from the dying civilizations. Behind them, the screaming continued for a while. Then it faded. Then it stopped. 1,000 years later, the Galactic Council was a memory. Human children learned about it in school the same way they learned about ancient wars and fallen empires. They studied the Velith and the Moradi and the Kethari, the way they studied dinosaurs and dodo birds, creatures that had once existed, creatures that were gone now. New species emerged from the darkness. Young civilizations took their first steps into the stars. And when they looked up, they found human ships already there, silent, watchful, ancient. The new species were confused at first. These humans seemed so friendly, so helpful, so willing to share their knowledge and their technology. They asked for nothing in return. They made no demands. They simply watched and waited and smiled. But the new species learned quickly. They learned from the old records that humans had preserved. They learned from the stories that humans told. They learned from the ruins of the Velith homeworld. In the empty shell of Nexus Prime, they learned what happened to species. That mocked humanity. They learned what happened to civilizations. That took human kindness for weakness. They learned the 3 rules that every wise species followed. When humans speak, listen. When humans warn, heed. And when humans fall silent and walk away. Pray. On the bridge of the UES Eternal Watch. Now a museum ship orbiting Earth. A hologram of Admiral Oh Youngji delivered her final message to visitors from across the galaxy. We did not want to be feared, she said. We wanted to be friends. We wanted to be partners. We wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. But the universe taught us a different lesson. It taught us that kindness without strength is weakness, that patience without power is surrender, that mercy without the will to act is just another word for death. She smiled, the same sad smile she had worn 1,000 years ago. So we became strong. We became powerful. We became the thing that waits in the darkness. Not because we wanted to, but because we had to. Because someone had to stand between the light and the void. Someone had to hold the line. She looked directly at the camera across 1,000 years of history. We are still holding it. We will always hold it. And if you ever doubt our resolve, if you ever wonder what we are capable of, remember the species that laughed at us. The hologram flickered. Remember that we are still here, and they are not. The hologram faded. The visitors left in silence. And somewhere in the deep dark between galaxies, Human ships continued their endless patrol, watching, waiting, remembering, always remembering.